Welcome everyone to our webinar today, Mindful Action. Firstly, I'd like to just acknowledge we all come from far and wide today, and we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we work and gather. I'm currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples, their ongoing culture and connection to land and waters. It's also really I think relevant to acknowledge that our Aboriginal peoples are some of the most mindful people on the planet, and they've practiced a lot of what we will talk about today for centuries. So we do a lot of work with the Aboriginal community in the New South Wales workforce, and we just remind them of what a mindful group of people they have been and the value that they can add by teaching us some of their practices into the future. Today, Adrian is going to take you through our take on mindful action. So Benny Button, we are an organisation that is here to help people and organisations live well and have impact. Mindful action is one of our hero factors of wellbeing that we celebrate. Adrian has written a book on this topic, Meditate on This, the Science of Mindfulness. So you can find that on our website if you want to read up on some of his insight and knowledge in this area. But whilst it's a really important and powerful practice, mindfulness, it can also be fun and playful. And today we want this to be a fun session. So get involved in the chat, have fun with the experience today, and Adrian will take you on a fun journey. So over to you, Adrian.
Thanks, Troy. Hi, everybody. This is a session on mindfulness, and in keeping with the bite-sized nature of our sessions, it will be short. And I can't help myself but want to talk so much about such an important area, which is mindfulness, and in our lives and in our work, mindful action. So counter to what people might believe about mindfulness, this will be quite fast paced, but I'll be mindful to really convey and deliver to you as much as I can that will be of value about our experience of mindfulness, as well as the traps that we can fall into where we are less mindful or more mindless. So let's set the context and see the different components that need to come together here. And then in our session as well, we will practice mindfulness, and you'll have a technique that you can take away from today. So work and life has been very, very busy, and keeping up with that and mindfully working when there's lots of distractions and interruptions coming our way has been challenging enough. And now with COVID-19, it really does feel like our work and life has been flipped on its head, and we've been needing to accommodate the challenges and demands of that. And this has created a real difficulty when it comes to our experiences of being mindful, because our lives have been so disrupted. So why is mindfulness so important right now? The reason is because we've got lots of traps that we fall into where we're actually quite mindless, where we react and engage in behaviors and thought processes that are not necessarily the best of our abilities and using the best of our attention. So we've got habits. We've got habits that have been established for a long period of time. We've got certain default ways that we do things, and there are lots of common biases that human beings fall into that can actually render us more mindless than mindful. And as an example, our attention and how we focus our attention. Research is showing that our attention span is declining, and whilst in Finding Nemo, Dory here is a poster child for the attention span, and I know that Dory is not a goldfish, but we know about goldfish in particular that they have a 9-second attention span. For some of you, this might be a surprise. You thought it was 3 seconds. No, in actual fact, we were shortchanging them. It's a 9-second attention span, and it's worth celebrating because human beings in recent measures of attention have a shorter attention span at 8 seconds. And scientists have been looking at this phenomenon and understanding that our hyperkinetic environment, so our overstimulating environment, is actually creating a lot of distraction and interruption, which is making it such that human beings are not able to focus and sustain their attention for an extended period of time. So our attention span is going down. What's related to this is our multitasking, where we're trying to do multiple things at once in a bit of a frenzy, switching between one task and the next. And interestingly, over on the slide here, you'll see that when we're trying to multitask, and this was found in research that looked at people doing multiple things at once, there's a 10 IQ point drop when multitasking. And you might be thinking, I've got plenty of intelligence to play with here. What's the point of comparison? Is that a big drop or not? Well, it's twice as much of a drop as smoking marijuana. So you are dumber multitasking than you are stoned. Not condoning marijuana smoking at all, but just to see that this thing, this trap, this habit that we fall into of multitasking is actually not only making us more frenzied, but it's having an impact on our intelligence and our ability to perform at our best. So distraction and multitasking are two habits, two traps that we fall into that can mean that we're less mindful and more mindless. This is going to be an interactive activity. So I want everyone to open the chat channel. I'm going to give you the clearest instructions that I can, and then we're going to all play along from home or wherever you are today. You're going to add the numbers that I reveal on the slide. You're going to add them in your head, and you're going to count and add them together as the successive total. And after you count the final red number, so the last number in the sequence will be red, I want you as quickly as you can to enter that successive total number into the chat channel to win a prize. So stay on the line and give us your details and you'll win a copy of my book. So the challenge is set. Add the numbers in your head. When you get to the red number, that is the last number to add, and then into the chat, type in your answer. We're going to get a bit of a rhythm to this. I'm going to open the chat channel myself so I can see who the winner is. And away we go. And we are yet to see the correct answer. So we have all, in fact, fallen into the trap, and there we have it, Travis. Well done. So 4,090 plus 10 equals 4,100. But I did trick you. Your brain fell into a rhythm. It saw a pattern, and then it got into autopilot. And as a result, you encountered an error. So the first rule of mindfulness as well is that notice when you get into autopilot mode, a default mode of thinking where you're going through the motions, and recognize that this can actually sometimes mean that we fall into experiences of error, where we encounter an error. So well done, Travis. And funny little clip here, autopilot mode. The point is that this can happen quite quickly. Now we go through the motions in daily activities all of the time, but even just in seeing on that experiment on the previous slide, we can see patterns and form a routine very quickly. And if we're not very conscious and mindful to the moment-to-moment stimulus, we can fall victim to those errors. So the next trap, does our mind wander off? Do we sometimes drift off into the past, going over things that have happened? Are we then forecasting our thinking and projecting into the future? And the answer for most of us, I would believe, is yes. And it's great that human beings can do that. Truly it is. The fact that we can reflect on past experiences and learn from those experiences, learn from mistakes, is really advantageous, but only if we make sure we don't get stuck there and we bring ourselves into the present to take into our present moment tasks the best of our insights and knowledge. Similarly, projecting into the future, planning, setting goals, looking at scenarios that may play out is really advantageous for us as human beings, but not if we get stuck there, only if we bring ourselves back into the present to focus on taking action right here, right now, that gets us where we want to go. But people do fall into traps where the mind wanders off. They get distracted and swept up in thought, going over the past that can't be changed and getting stuck there, and then flying off into the future and worrying and anticipating what might happen next, but not necessarily skillfully bringing their attention back into the present to focus on the here and now. As it turns out, that nearly half of our waking life is spent thinking about something other than what we're actually doing in the moment. 47%, in fact, of our waking life is spent thinking about something that isn't actually happening right now. And so this links to our time traveling trap. So the time traveling trap means that our mind nearly half of the time is drifting off onto other things. What we've got as human beings as well is what's called a negativity bias, where our mind will tend to drift off, not necessarily to the nice, pleasant, happy things, but instead the unresolved challenges, the difficulties that we face, the potential sources of stress and threat. And so the quote here from research that really looked at the significance of this shows us that a human mind is a wandering mind. It is naturally a wandering mind, but a wandering mind can be a very unhappy mind. The ability to think about things that aren't actually happening is a great cognitive achievement, a great faculty of mind, but it can come at an emotional cost where we're experiencing wear and tear by being drifted off a lot. So be mindful of these traps: distraction, multitasking, getting on autopilot, the time traveling mind wandering, as well as our negativity bias, because these traps can create difficulty for us in being mindful and can create their own performance errors and challenges, as well as wear and tear in terms of our experiences of stress. And when it comes to practicing mindfulness, we can know that to be more mindful would be better to overcome some of these traps, but we just don't have time. We don't have time to practice mindfulness and fit more into our day. But we do need to ask ourselves, is time really the challenge here? Is time really the enemy? Because time just happens. Time will just play on. Is our time well spent? Now, that's a good question. And the answer to that is in mastering our attention. So time will happen, but if we master where our attention goes, our time can be better spent. And so why is mindfulness so important, and what is it exactly? Well, it's a state of active attention. So in mastering our attention, mindfulness is a state of attention that we can invest in, that we can get better at. It is intentional attention. What that means is that we are choosing where we want to focus. We have an intention and we choose an object to focus on with our attention. And it is something that we can invest ourselves in the present moment. The only moment that we can do anything with is to be tuned into me, my body, my mind, the task at hand, the environment that I'm in right here, right now. The third component to mindfulness as a state of active attention is where the rubber really, really, really hits the road. I can't stress enough. But our attention is receptive. So in whatever we're focused on intentionally, in the present moment, we are receptive to what is going on. We are open-minded. We are curious. We instead, and this is where it becomes really interesting. You're like, okay, receptive, open-minded, and curious. The opposite is what we tend to be. Judgmental, we have expectations, there are certain rules. And so instead of just thinking through our expectations and judgments and thinking critically, instead we need to be open-minded and receptive. So there's two main forms of practice. If we're to develop the skills of attention, there are two main forms of practice that we can undertake. Structured practices, which include techniques, methodologies like meditation, and there are different forms of meditation. We're going to do a brief meditation soon. And there's also mind-body practices. So there's structured practices, techniques that are either more stillness focused, like formal meditation, or dynamic, mind-body practices like yoga, qigong, tai chi, and so forth. And then we have this second form of practice, which we call situational practices or informal practices, where we're deliberately practicing bringing mindful attention to any daily activity. Your morning coffee might be something that you actually drink on autopilot whilst also doing emails and whatnot, but can we actually find daily routine activities that we can invest in more mindfully? Tune into your coffee intentionally. Be in the present moment with the sensory experience, the smells, the temperature, the feeling of your brain lighting up as you drink it, and being receptive and open to that whole experience rather than critical that your bearded barista didn't do as good a shamrock in the top of your coffee in the morning, or whatever that might be. So structured and situational practices. Practicing for us is linked with a really great principle that we learned from Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. So I'm going to play a little clip to remind you of where this is actually demonstrated mindfulness practice and its advantages.
Wax on, wax off. Don't forget to breathe. Very important. Wax on, wax off. Don't forget to breathe. Very important. Wax on, wax off. Don't forget to breathe. Very important.
So wax on, wax off, and don't forget to breathe. Very important. Mr. Miyagi and Daniel-san in this scene here are looking at how Daniel-san can practice wax on, wax off, and breathing, not so he can just get good at washing cars, which is what Daniel-san initially thought, but it was so that he could practice this in the controlled environment of the car wash, build the skill, build the mindfulness, tune into his body and breath, and then use that in the dojo to block an oncoming attack. That was wax on, wax off. And this actually illustrates for us as well the distinction between mindfulness and meditation, which is a bit of a confusing one for lots of people. Mindfulness is a state of being that we practice and that we cultivate, and meditation is the technique, the thing that we do to bring about that state. So in this situation here, and even thinking about physical exercise as a bit of a working model, feeling fit, feeling strong, feeling energized, feeling calm, those are states like mindfulness. And meditation would be, the equivalent would be going to the gym, doing the exercise, doing a circuit workout. So meditation is a technique and a method. Mindfulness is the state that we cultivate. And we work with the two in order to be more mindful more of the time. There's lots of scientific benefits behind mindfulness. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but attention management, attention regulation is key. And in fact, we can focus our attention on mind-body experiences that help to work our nervous system and calibrate our nervous system. And that's what we're going to do right now with our breath. Again, we think there's not time for this. How do I actually work with time? We say time is not the issue here. Mastering your attention is the challenge. And so there really is no time like the present to engage in mindfulness practice. Here we see LeBron James, one of the best NBA players of all time, practicing mindfulness on the bench of an intense game that he's playing. So if he can make time for it, we can make some time to practice mindfulness. So the practice that I'm going to take you through here before we round out the session is a breath and balancing practice that will actually calibrate the state of our nervous system, because we'll be breathing evenly. And I'm going to start this animation, and you'll have the instructions on the bottom of the screen too. I'm going to speak very briefly, then give you some space for the practice yourself. But our inhale breath will be tapping the thumb to each of our fingers on the right hand, and that'll create a 5 count to our inhale breath. And then we do the same with our exhale, but with our left hand. So we inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will guide you through the first round. The instructions will say up here. I'll give you about a minute to just breathe yourself. You can count, tune into the tapping sensation, and find an easy, even rhythm for your breath. Okay. So sitting, uncrossing your legs if you can, putting the backs of your hands on your lap so your palms are face up. If you feel like you understand the instructions, feel free to close down your eyes. Otherwise, I'll guide you through it, and we'll first exhale together. So breathing out, and our right hand with our inhale breath, our thumb taps index, middle, ring, pinky, open the palm for space. Exhale left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale right hand. Exhale left hand. Now find your rhythm. If your mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring yourself back to your next breath. We'll go for about a minute before I close out our practice. Now, wherever you are, you can feel free to suspend the tapping of your thumb to your fingers now and just follow the flow of rhythm, the flow of your breath for a few moments more. Collecting in your awareness how your body's feeling. What are the qualities that you're noticing in your mind and in your body right now? We'll bring this short practice to a close, just simply blinking open the eyes if your eyes were closed. And acknowledging, even from a brief period of pause, what do we notice in tuning in to body and breath and working our breath rhythm? What do we notice for ourselves? And I really encourage you to, if you feel comfortable, to share into the chat channel, what have you noticed from your mindfulness practice today? How are you feeling? 1 to 3 words sharing how you're feeling after this practice. Thank you for sharing your the qualities that you noticed from this brief mindfulness practice. And what I always find interesting, that I hope you do too, is that at no point in the guided practice did I say, calm down, relax, center your mind. Instead, what we notice is in just stopping and tuning into our body and our breath rhythm and evening things out, even just for a minute, that we're noticing these qualities for ourselves as a byproduct. So we focused our attention on the practice moment by moment, and then we cultivated these qualities as a byproduct of our practice. Calm, focus, awareness is lifted, we can feel more energized. There are so many benefits that can come our way. Practice does make progress. Practice won't always feel easy. That might have felt challenging for some, and it's much like learning to ride a bike. We can be a little bit wobbly at first, and even with this technique, it can take a little bit of attention to figure out how to tap and find a rhythm with my breath. But in that lies a really great example of how mindfulness unfolds and how we develop this capability. We are focusing our attention on the present moment task. Our brain didn't have as much time to drift off into other thoughts. And as a result, we stayed more connected. By finding an even rhythm to our breath, it had the byproduct of influencing our nervous system and calibrating our energies. So we don't practice mindfulness so much to actually get the benefits of it in the practice, though they are welcome and we can embrace them. We practice these skills so that we can get better in our lives. We can do this as a wax on, wax off cross-training example so that we can be more mindful in encountering the traps and tripping hazards of mindlessness in our daily lives. So a tip here before we close is to punctuate your day with brief or more extended periods of mindfulness practice, structured practices, and even situational tasks and activities that you can engage in more mindfully. So putting a little comma in your day, a little pause between one thing and the next, a full stop, a mindfulness practice to invest in restoring your energies and centering your body and mind. I really encourage you to find times in your day where you can integrate practice. Self-care couldn't be more important than it is right now. And much like the example, when the oxygen mask falls from the roof, fit your own oxygen mask first before helping others. Increasing cabin pressure, we need to breathe, and that's what we're experiencing right now. So really see it as an opportunity for you to invest in you. It's not selfish or self-indulgent. You shouldn't feel guilty about it. When you can be at your best, you will be able to serve others at your best as well. I'm going to hand over to Troy to do the final wrap, and then we are done for today's webinar.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. As we say each week, you can check out our resources that we have available at bennybutton.com. We encourage you to go there. There's some COVID-19 specific resources. If you want to have a look at your Benny Button profiler, we've got a special discount code called Bite Size. You can get an understanding of your mindful action profile on there, and just think about that from an organization or a team perspective. We see that less than 8% of teams and organizations have mindful action as a real strength. And we know the flow-on effect, how positive it could be if people in our workplaces are developing skills in mindful practices like Adrian has taken us through today. The flow-on is huge. So we encourage you to go there and take a look. Next week, we're actually going to have a bit of a pause and a breather ourselves from these bite-sized webinars, but we'll come back the week after, and we encourage you to contact us at hello@bennybutton.com if you've got any topics or themes that you'd like to encourage us to consider for future bite-sized webinars. But thank you so much for being a part of today. Reach out to us if you or your organization needs support, and we'll be back in touch soon. Thank you.